Well, well, well. Hello everyone and welcome back to the magical Krown's igloo cave.
That's right, baby. We are deep inside the forest of Finland right now, in an igloo, actually, coming at you not live, but early in the morning. And I want to follow up on yesterday's price action. Once again, the airplane pump indicator actually kind of working there. As weird as it sounds, as weird as it is for both you and myself. Do want to talk a little bit about that. And because we are coming into the end of the month here, I want to talk about the more long-term analysis of Bitcoin. I will try to make this video a little bit on the shorter side, mostly because my upload speed here is certainly not optimal. So in the interest of brevity, in the interest of also getting myself on the top of this next ski slope before before midday, I would like to kind of get through this one. So with that said, I do want to always, as always, be wishing you the well and be wishing you the best, and the happiest. And I feel like there's something else that I'm missing. Well, we'll figure it out later. Anyways, let's go switch it over to the live stream right over here and see what's going on in good old Bitcoin land as Bitcoin on the monthly. So like I said, I want to focus on the higher time frames here. We are coming into the end of the month. We got less than a week to go. I think next Friday is going to be the last day of the month, so to speak. And the big thing here and what's really going to govern the macro is how we end the month. Do we end above or below this red 10 simple moving average that you can see is kind of governing price action right now? Of course, Bitcoin's made a nice foray attempt above it intra-month, but it doesn't matter what happens intra-month. It only matters where we end the month, because that is where the Boston algos are essentially trying to mark price action off at. And if we do essentially end above this red 10 simple, which is currently a little bit below 8,500, about a hair below 8,500, I would look for the next following months to just kind of slowly but surely climb its way higher, and we likely will get all of the lower time frame upside breakout objectives kind of met. So that's why I really want to focus on this, because it's gonna naturally govern all of the other things going on here. Now, by the same token, if we do end below the 10 simple, as you can see, which we are actually currently right now about almost $200 below to the T. It's not a death sentence for Bitcoin, but it certainly suggests that we're going to create a range here between the 21 and the 10 simples. So just hovering between the low 8,000s and the low 7,000s, which would likely imply that we are going to take the southern road this next month or two, or whatever it ends up being. So with that in mind, we'll go down here to the lower time frame, see how everything kind of marked off on Friday for close, and actually really don't hate this close that we saw on Friday right here, especially coming into a weekend time where weekends typically, typically sideways action, creating a nice little trading range. And with that said, I'm not really expecting like a big move to the upside here. I'm not expecting a big move to the downside. I'm expecting Bitcoin to more or less be caught in a range here between the 200 exponential moving average on the daily and wherever like 8,500 is. And I'm sure that that's essentially where the 10 symbol is going to curl around in another day or two. And yes, indeed, it probably does. It's currently right around 8,600. So I don't think that Bitcoin is going to be making any big moves today or really tomorrow until maybe I get back on the airplane, because funnily enough, I will actually be flying around the time when CMEs perhaps open once again, maybe a little bit earlier than that, but it will actually be matching up with that. And typically, at least in my experience, we don't really start breaking ranges more often than not. Of course, not always, but more often than not, we don't really break ranges when CMEs are closed. So as it stands right now, I actually don't hate this close that we saw on Friday for Bitcoin, and closing above the yellow 21 exponential moving average after meeting our target down to the 8,200-ish level. Yes, it was 82.12.9 or sorry, 90 cents on a stamp right here. So the target was not exactly met, but close enough is close enough. And 12 or basically $13 is as far as I'm concerned, that's the same fucking thing. Anyways, as far as the daily goes here, what I've been saying for this past week still very much applies. As long as we're above 8,200. I'm actually really not bearish here, and especially as long as we're above the yellow 21 exponential moving average. While we were talking about downside, where we're talking about a target down here to 8,200, 8,250-ish region. Not breaking this region is it doesn't really offer us up too much right now. It just kind of suggests that we're probably going to go sideways here, and a consolidation anywhere above the 21 between there and the 10 simple is more or less constructive behavior, as long as Bitcoin kind of holds this area coming into the next trading week, starting Monday, so another 2 days to go. But so far so good, and it's going to allow the lower time frames and the medium time frames oscillators to likely cool off, assuming that we don't break any major regions. We are seeing daily stochs coming all the way down here, and they actually did break this trend line, this long-term trend line coming in all the way from pretty much from our lows in December, actually. But I would be looking for it to probably curl around somewhere down around the edge of the bearish control zone as the next sort of region I'd be looking for. So that's kind of the big things that I'm really focused on right here, because as long as Bitcoin just trades sideways here without, it can come back down and test around 8,200 again, that's completely fine. But as long as it doesn't break it, it's just going to allow those oscillators to reset. And like I said, I do like the closure that we saw on Friday, because that's going to be more indicative of where we kind of hang out around until the real trading week begins once again, late Sunday or early Monday, depending upon where you live in this world. Anyways, let's go check out CMEs, because they are obviously not trading for the weekend, but I really, really like this wake up that we saw off the yellow 21 exponential average right here, and pretty much 82.20 to the fucking T. And to me, this is completely fine. I'd be looking. I think it's a little bit more obvious here on CMEs that Bitcoin wants to create a trading range between about 80, or I guess on CMEs, the price action would be a little bit different, but we did pretty much close right at 8,500. But anywhere between about 84 to the 200 simple on the daily right here at about 87.50 is where I'd be looking towards, and that is more or less constructive. As long as Bitcoin's above there, I would still actually be medium time frame bullish on this, looking for, well, medium time frame bullish is not the right word, because we are in an uptrend on the medium time frames. Yes, that's what I'm referring to, but more or less going sideways within this region is what I'm actually really looking for over the next few days. And I wouldn't get bearish, and I reserve, and I will not get bearish until we actually fully and formally break below 8,200, preferably on a higher time frame close. 12-hour would be good enough for me. Daily obviously would be no questions asked. But the question is, could you do it on like a 4-hour perhaps? Well, as always, higher time frames are better, but I would certainly be very concerned if we did start to close 4-hour doldrums, especially below the 200 exponential average right here, right around the bottom edge of this next order block territory at about 8,100 even, as you see. And yes, that is essentially consistent with the 200 exponential average on the 4-hour. So I do like that area. As long as Bitcoin remains above there on a 4-hour, I suppose I would say that we can get a wick down. That's completely fine. But as long as no closures below there, I more or less look at this as a nice, as a nice area to consolidate in, and for the bulls potentially set in another little higher low here. So keep in mind that the medium timeframes are obviously going to have a lot of implication in governing the macro, because coming into this next week, we're going to actually see the monthly close. And with that in mind, that would suggest that, well, if we can hold this 8,200-ish level and kind of consolidate within this region, that is going to give the bulls a legitimate chance to actually close above, and bringing everything here together from the beginning to opening of this video, above the 10 simple on the monthly, which again is right around 8,500-ish region, a little bit below there. And in fact, you do see that CMEs are pretty much above there right now. So that is very interesting to me. And if and of course the same thing applies that we were speaking about earlier this week, that if Bitcoin were to break below 8,200, then that would set the daily into an actual confirmed downtrend, which would imply that we probably do come all the way down at the very least to about 7,750, 7,800-ish region right here. Personally speaking, I do think that we'd have a bounce right in this region. However, longer term, I would look for Bitcoin to come all the way back down to that low 7,000, 7,200-ish number, which, again, bringing it full circle here, going back to the beginning of this video, where is that? And consistent with that is the monthly 21 exponential average. So this next week of price action is incredibly important for kind of judging the more long-term trajectory, I'd say, over the next month or two coming into February, March here. So this is really important stuff, because while right now it's not all that interesting within this region, I don't really expect this $200, $300 region to be evaporated today or tomorrow. It will have clarity by the end of this next coming week. So each and every passing day coming into this next week is going to be incredibly important. And like I said, as long as Bitcoin can kind of form a base support right around 8,200 and protect this last breakout that we saw from early January, that's more or less constructive. And that would not only allow the medium timeframes to consolidate in a more healthy manner, but that would have massive implications with forcing the macro timeframes like the monthly to give it a chance to really have that nice closure that we're looking for coming in at the end of this coming Friday. Anyways, if Bitcoin, I already covered that. Let's go down to the lower time frames now. See how they're operating. I'd imagine that they're pretty much crushed here. We do see that the 4-hour is trying to set in a nice little local low here. If it can actually confirm that, we will have bullish divergence confirmed on 4-hour RSI. And there's a few interesting things about the momentum oscillators that are going on right here. But first and foremost, I want to start off with historical volatility percentile, which is still contracting. So the reason why I like this is that when you do see this contracting coming into a support territory, that is suggesting that this is going to operate in a nice little range. And remember, the range here would be considered more constructive than corrective in that manner, which means that, well, it's going to give Bitcoin a chance to actually, pop above coming into this next week. So realistically, this analysis is not even really focused on today's price action, because I don't really think that it matters all that much, to be honest with you. It's really about the end of the monthly here that's going to set everything in. By the same token, if we were to see the lower timeframes pop back above and get a 4-hour total close back above about 8,500, now putting on the drawing tools right here, that's where things actually do change for the short and medium timeframes. If Bitcoin can have that on a 4-hour, we would effectively set this in as a nice little local low, and I'd be looking for a move back up to about 8750-ish region, this little local high right here, and that starts to look a lot better for the more macro. So again, we want to be thinking about how these puzzle pieces fit into the greater picture as we come to the end of the month here, because that is going to really govern the next major moves, which is what I believe most people are probably interested in. And like I said, for this next 24 hours of price action, I'm really not expecting anything. Not that expectations are anything that should be in a trader's vocabulary, but when I say I'm not really expecting anything, I'm not really expecting anything, to break above this horizontal right here at our last little local high, a little bit below 8,500, which is again where the 10 simple is on the monthly, or below this blue box territory right here on a higher time frame close below 82, or on a lower time frame close below about 81. As long as we're kind of just trendless within this region right here, kind of oscillating to and fro from the support and resistance, I think that is actually a little more constructive for bulls longer term, and going to give them the opportunity to actually break to the upside here. But my big point is, with this next 24, maybe even 48 hours worth of price action, I'm not expecting either one of these ranges to be broken. It's just a game of support and resistance, and right now we are testing, or we're a lot more close to support, of course. Anyways, if we go down to the lower time frames, the lower time frames than that, I'm curious how the historical volatility percentile is operating here. We are actually expanding off the 3-hour, which is interesting to me. Wouldn't have expected that. Same thing with the 2-hour, and hourly is going to certainly be doing the exact same thing hourly is contracting here, so 3 and the 2 are kind of the odd man out. So we probably do have another test of the upside resistance. We also probably have another test of the downside support, is what that's just to me on the lower time frame, still kind of expanding from this territory. But I don't think that Bitcoin has momentum from either side to break it today or tomorrow, realistically. But of course, as I said, my opinion on this is pretty much worthless. If we do break this guy to the downside, same targets as we spoke about before, 7750 to the downside, probably bounce there, and then continuation down to the lower ends of the 7,000s, and to the upside a little more tricky, but we'll come back to that one over time, because I'm not really in any rush to to see this happen like today. Anyways, looking at momentum oscillators, we do see that 4-hour stocks are kind of curling down once again, not looking like the picture of health right there. I'm curious how the 3 hours are operating. Are they agreeing? Yes, indeed they are. 2-hour are certainly going to be doing the same thing as well, and hourly are going to be flopping around. So realistically, what do we see by that? To me, that likely means we're going to swipe the lows once again, and then probably not have the momentum to actually break from the lows. The reason why I say that is because the lower time frames are already quite low here. Even the hourly is already kind of trying to flip around. 4-hour has a little bit to be done, but the big thing for me is actually the medium time frames, like the 10 and the 12-hour, which have been getting price action extremely well, especially when Bitcoin's in trading ranges. And 10 hours already crossing the upside, and 12 hours is going to be likely following suit soon, assuming that Bitcoin just does not break essentially this blue box territory in the next 36 hours, it looks like. So I do kind of like that setup right there. And overall, you could also interpret this as a test of the golden cross on the 12-hour total time frame. The reason why this is important, as we've been showing, is because, well, it's just one of those things that typically likes to take precedence in Bitcoin land. We do see, and I have 3 moving averages on here right now. We're focusing on the green and the purple, the green being the 55, the purple being the 200. Yes, I know that most people use the 50. It's going to be about the same fucking thing, man. 5 extra periods, not going to make any real difference. And more importantly is the efficacy of this over time, which, people will look up a dictionary definition of these things and say, but Krown, you're wrong. We're supposed to use it on simples. Well, yeah, okay, try it out on simples and tell me how well that works for you. And I'm not saying that to be arrogant. I'm not saying that to be a dick. But at the end of the day, you should value your own experience and your own interpretation of these, of these sorts of things, than like a dictionary, like an Oxford dictionary definition. Otherwise, the people who went to school for this shit would be the best traders in the world, and usually they're not, and usually they work for someone else, or usually they just get wrecked, is what I've seen. Anyways, the best traders that I've always seen have always valued their own personal experience above all others. In alignment with some sort of like a healthy mentor. Anyways, looking at this right here, we do see that actually let me get rid of the 200 simple. It is kind of getting in the way right there. We do see that there's very few one-offs when using this as a golden, or sorry, when looking at this over time for golden crosses and death crosses. Last golden cross that we had was right on over here on April, leading this whole breakout almost like a 3 or 4, or sorry, from like 4,000 to 14,000. So more than a 3x, almost a 4x off the lows. Then we got a death cross running over here, led us all the way down from about 10 to 6.5. You get the idea. And of course, before that, even better, during 2018, we were death cross the whole way through, all the way from January, February of 2018 to basically that $4,000 price point. And going back even further than that into into the past market cycles right here, we do see that we essentially once we got golden cross in October 2015, that led us all the way up from like $250 to $20,000. So not bad. Not bad for an almost 100x right there. Anyways, we did have a couple one-offs in 2015, so I do think that is relevant to kind of zoom in on, because here's the thing: even when we do have these one-offs which don't end up actually being good trades, or sorry, don't end up having those same sort of major moves that we were looking for before, you do see that even on this failed signal essentially, there's still a 30% gainer from signal given to next high. This guy running over here probably not going to be as good. This one about 15%. If you're taking it from actual price action to the next high, which is the way that you should be doing, because you can't buy on the fucking cross. You can only buy where price action is. But anyways, that would suggest that this area that we've seen thus far right here, only being about a 4%, a little bit less than a 4% gainer to the upside, is certainly very much an outlier. Now here's the thing, and here's what I really put the main focus on. While it's great that we see this on spot, and you should see this on spot theoretically first before you see it on CMEs, which I think matter more, it does align with the fact that we probably are going to have a chance to actually see this happen on CMEs. And look at this. If we go over here to CMEs, where is Bitcoin bouncing off of? Holy shit. It's the 200x Benjamin average on the 12 hour right here. Let me just make sure that I'm recording and my phone is working. Okay, that's great. It's actually working. And this is a pretty damn good reaction off this area. This is kind of what I was looking for coming into Friday, when I was speaking about, okay, we're probably gonna have another leg down to 8,200. The reaction off that area is going to be very indicative of how this shapes up longer term. And so far so good, but we really need to get CMEs back and open and trading again to have more clarity on this situation. I really don't like it when only spot is trading and CMEs are not, because most professional traders are trading on normal trading, normal stock exchange hours. So looking at CMEs right here, this is a pretty damn good reaction thus far. And more importantly, as long as Bitcoin maintains a 200x Benjamin average on the 12-hour for CMEs, this golden cross will actually inevitably happen. And to me, what we could actually do right here, and this is a little bit of an aggressive play in my own opinion, but I actually would be very comfortable with doing this. I would actually put an alert right at the low of this last dildo right here, which I guess was 82.35 to the T. We ended right on that, and I'm actually put an alert right there. And the second that Bitcoin goes below there, I would look at this as a failed bounce attempt, and I would be targeting to move down towards 7,800, 7,750 for that next small medium term bounce region. But for right now, this reaction right here is fine, is good, is dandy, and I'm curious if we got back above the 21. Yes, we are above the 21. Okay, I really like that, and I would say that if we get continuation coming into next week, which in this area would be a little bit more difficult, but I can't just take like a random price, or not a random price, but I can't just come up with a pivot without looking for closures first to fully confirm that, as it is a little bit dangerous here. But I would say that as long as Bitcoin essentially just does not break back down below these prior lows right here, we will get that golden cross. And that is also why I'm saying that sideways within this region, again, bringing everything full circle, is more or less good for the bulls, as they're going to get the golden cross on CMEs, which is going to hold a lot more weight than spot markets. And as it stands right now, we're going to see momentum oscillators probably start to curl around a little bit, or actually no, not necessarily, but we do see 12 hour starts getting way down there on CMEs. I'm curious how the lower time frames are doing. 4 hour, where are you? 4 hour, Bueller. Beeler popping back up, although they are kind of in alignment with this trend line right here. So we'll see if it can actually break that one. I'd say that that's probably going to be the earliest indication of a legitimate of a legitimate short-term bottom being put in once again, and in offering up that nice constructive behavior going sideways here that I'd be looking for. If we could pop back above again the edge of this trend line, which is going to be coming in right around the edge of the bearish control zone. So I do like that. And what else do we see? 4-hour RSI is not really telling us all that much. It's a little bit more on the bearish side, I suppose. However, I wouldn't put... I wouldn't put you all that much weight on it. We did have some bullish divergence coming off of it, but that's mostly played out, or at least the easy part of that has played out. So other than that, I wouldn't say anything anything else. What about the 3-hour? What are we doing right on over here? 3-hour actually looks okay. Couple of good closes right there. 3-hour Stokes open and upwards as well, but the same sort of trend line forming. Here's how the 2 hours doing. 2 hours all the way up there, and hourly is probably going to be floating around. Yes, indeed, it is. So, so what I make of that is essentially that CMEs are probably going to hold it up a little bit here. Remember that CMEs closed at around 8,500, and there's actually very little price premium on CMEs versus spot right now. Maybe like $20, I think. So I would look for Bitcoin price action to hang around here until tomorrow's open for CMEs and the game is on. And realistically, to the upside, it's a little more difficult, as I said. Above 8,500, things do start to look a little bit better on lower time frame closes. But realistically, just as long as CMEs don't take out that last prior low at 82.35, this will look a lot better. This will look pretty damn good. And as I've been saying, a consolidation between essentially the 200 exponential moving average on the 12-hour, if we can get these major moving averages populated right here, you motherfucker, you. There we are. And using the daily 200 simple as resistance, a consolidation between there is more or less fine for Bitcoin. Again, I do like this close, and I want to be on the record as saying that. Now, I should say that it's certainly not all said and done. We do see that daily Stokes are curling down here on CMEs, which have almost never been a good thing. However, we do have a nice support trend line forming, which is going to be governing right at the edge of the bullish control zone right over here. So we'll see. We'll just have to see how the one operates, really. Today is kind of going to be an unhelpful analysis, as we really need to just let more price action transpire before coming in and making more deliberate claims. But what I do feel comfortable saying again is, as long as this area holds 8,200, I'm not really bearish. As long as we are below, about 89.50 on spot, I'm not necessarily like bullish, but I do look at this as a healthy sideways price action right here, kind of setting a nice little base on the daily, which can have implications into the coming monthly in a little bit less than a week now. So that's the big kind of takeaway points from something like this. We can go check out expected moves chart, but let's go back down to Mexico here and check on the low time frame ranges once again, just kind of confirm. So remember, 8,200 to the downside, that's a big point. 8,500 to the upside is our more preliminary resistance, which I do believe would look pretty damn good if we got back above. And then above there, it's just kind of a stair step between 87.50, then 89.50. 89.50 being probably the most important one, as that's going to be where the daily 200 simple is coming in around. Yes, indeed, actually pretty much to the T right now. So let's go check out expected moves right here. And what do we see? We do see, whoa, hey. Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. This is why I'm glad I look at this. Expected moves chart does say that downside is more likely. It does say that downside is more likely. Now, the reason why I say that is because the edge of the first standard deviation to the downside is at 80.50-ish region, which is obviously very well below that critical 8,200 number that we just spoke about. So could Bitcoin get a wick down there and still close above 8,200 by end of day? Yes. So I would caution against like getting too bearish, even if it did go back down below where we're talking about right now. Earlier. However, this would say that we actually do have about if we were to kind of mark this to the middle, I'm going to have to do a little bit of mental math here. It's going to probably be embarrassing. Maybe around like a 30% chance that we actually do break that critical area 8,200 by end of day. By the same token, to the upside, a little bit more difficult, but we do see that the top side of the first aviation is coming in right around about 85, or about a little bit below 8,600. So that would be within the encompassing region on the next preliminary resistance, but that doesn't really help all that much. I mean, it certainly looks better than not. It would be kind of like the first thing on the lower time frames that actually matter to me, as far as like breaking the low time frame range, of course. But probabilities would certainly be on the downside right here, as from a mathematical standpoint, using historical volatility percentile to come up with these expected ranges. So fair enough. Anyways, to the upside, of course, I do think that it's worth mentioning that's getting back above and breaking out to the critical upside point of about 89.50. Very much unlikely today. We do see that's about certainly less than a negative, or sorry, less than a 2.5% chance right here. Actually even less than that, because it's gonna be in between these two guys right here. So as it stands right now, it looks like Bitcoin's getting that nice little rally that we spoke about earlier. So I do think that more or less we're probably just gonna hold tight within this region, and we're probably gonna see the expected moves ranges collapse on itself. We want to see volatility decline within this region, and that would be, again, more or less healthy for Bitcoin longer term. Anyways, okay, cool. So we spoke about all of that. I don't want to get too much more in depth here because I do want to make this video on the shorter side so I can actually upload it. We're already 25 minutes in. Jesus fucking Christ. Whoops. Elsa's getting attacked by her makeup in the background. Anyways, let's go see how the other market, let's go see how GBTC is doing first. We'll take a look at the other top two shitcoins and come up with it from there. GBTC came all the way down to our January 9th lows, which would be akin to that 7750, 7800-ish region. Which is interesting to me. I mean, we did make a lower low on GBTC, which I do not like. But who runs the price action? I think CMEs has a bigger implication for that than spot than GBTC. So is GBTC just a more what's it called, emotional kind of subsidiary of spot price? I do think so. Also, we do see that the premium dissipated a little bit, so that would kind of account for why there was a lower low put in right here, where we don't see it on spot or CMEs. Would be my explanation for that. But realistically, this isn't telling us all that much from this closure. If I was just looking at GBTC, I would be overall bearish on it. However, we're not just looking at GBTC, and GBTC weekly close looks significantly different than CMEs. In fact, going back on over to CME right here, well, CME weekly close doesn't look so hot either, to be fair. CME weekly close actually offers up a very easy way to be trading this. Whichever one that we take out first, the top side or the bottom side of this prior weekly dildo, 88.65 to the upside and 82.35 to the downside is going to be our next direction. To the downside, I'd look for a move down here towards the 10 simple on the weekly. To the upside, I'd look for an extension all the way up to our last prior weekly high, right around about 9,500. So yeah. Anyways, what else do we have? Let's go take a look at the top two shitcoins for a second here. What do we got on Mr. Buteral? 160.25. Doing basically the same chart as Bitcoin. In fact, let me put back on all major movement emphasis so I can see. Very, very similar chart to Bitcoin, so probably going to do whatever Bitcoin does. Kind of see a little bit of a head and shoulders in here, although I wouldn't necessarily consider it one. Litecoin, same thing. Litecoin actually already hit the target of the head and shoulders to the downside. We did hit that $52 target that we spoke about yesterday, and now bouncing on from it. Again, gonna mirror whatever Bitcoin does. Everything is still in a long-term downtrend, to be fair. We do see that Litecoin coming just shy of taking out the last prior weekly high, coming in right around about 64 and a half bucks. Getting rejected a couple bucks before that, so it's still technically in a downtrend. But the thing with the weekly is that the weekly is showing that, you know, from an oscillator perspective, probably do have more of an upside potential here than downside. Weekly Stokes headed back upwards and onwards. We do see kind of a change of behavior here, getting back above our September breakdown from 10.3, which is a big deal to me. Weekly RSI approaching the area where it actually can change, but of course, from a macro standpoint, from a macro standpoint on weekly RSI, we do see that anytime that we're below the 55, 56 marker right here, that is more or less bearish over the course of history for Bitcoin. That's during all of our downtrends right here, 2014, 2015 right here, all of 2018 right here, and more recently the latter half of 2019 right here. And again, verify this for yourself. Don't take my word for it. And of course, you know, as it stands right now, with weekly Stokes kind of turning back up, if we were to see that next level taken out to the upside, like again about 89.50ish region, I do believe that we'd very likely clear this region on weekly RSI, and historically speaking, that means your bull markets like this area right here between 2015 to 2018, this area right here from 2012 to 2014, and more recently from March 2019 to the $14,000 high. So we're kind of in a space of limbo right now, and I do think that more or less this next like week of price action is gonna be critical today. Not all that helpful, so I do apologize. You know, if this video is if this video isn't like immediately helpful, because I don't really think that there's too much to be done today, to be quite frank with you. Anyways, let's go check out traditional markets really quick. Having a little bit of that reversal that we spoke about. I do think that this probably is a little bit more downwards to go. I think my target from yesterday, was coming in right around here, right around about 326. We didn't necessarily meet that target. And this does look a little bit more reversalish to me, actually. Daily Jewel is giving is going to give a sell signal relatively soon, I imagine. Daily Stokes coming down, but that's not a death sentence. Daily RSI bearish divergence and down, and both that and the Jewel do make me think that we probably do have a little bit of correction here. So I do still feel comfortable with that coming down a little bit further. But make no mistake about it, this can afford a pullback here. And again, as long as the monthly ends anywhere above about 325, I think that's completely fine. If the monthly ends below, let's call it like 320, then we got a problem. But I think it's fine right now. But still, I do think that there's a little bit more of a pullback to go. Anyways, let's go back on over to Bitcoin over here and wrap this bitch up. Again, monthly is really the key critical point right now. Do we end the monthly above the 10 simple or below? If we ended above, I'd generally be looking for the next few months to just float onwards and upwards towards 9,500 and then beyond, as that'd create a weekly uptrend for the first time since the highs at 14,000 in June. And to the downside, a little bit more difficult, but if we do end below the 10 simple, I do believe that we'd probably come back down and at the very least test a 20-month exponential moving average in the low 7,000s. Do we break to new lows after that? I think that we just have to come back. We'd have to come back and analyze it at the time of that happening. I wouldn't feel comfortable making a call like that right here, right now. As far as the daily goes, as long as it's kind of using 8,200 support, I'm still not bearish. I look at this as a potential to set in another higher low right here and create a trading range between about 8,500 and 8,200, which is more or less constructive over the medium term, which can have extrapolations into the higher time frames, as 8,500 is that critical price point from the monthly where things really start to look a lot better. And of course, if we did break 8,200 today, which I'm not really looking for it to happen, but I would look for a move down to about 7,800, 7,750-ish region, have a nice little bounce there, and then probably continuation lower. By the same token, any sort of a daily close above 200 simple moving average right here at about 8,950, which I don't think is happening today either. I'd be looking for extension to about 9,500 to the next weekly pivot. So again, and on the very low time frames, of course, here's what I think is most likely to happen. We're going to see very, very likely just a range getting tested, both on the downside at around, low 8,200. In fact, did we already get that for today? Perhaps, yes. I mean, we got down to 8,250-ish region, so that's close enough. And then probably going to test somewhere around here on the top side of the range as well. And I wouldn't really be expecting any sort of a break of this. So a nice little game of low time frame support and resistance leading on into the weekly close tomorrow for spot price action is going to be the most likely thing to happen, in my opinion, even though expected moves chart does say that we are a little bit more angled towards the downside break. I think I would supersede this one, and what do you know, right now we're seeing this bounce kind of emerge from itself. So with that said, I want to wish you well. I want to go do a little bit of snowboarding myself. I'm really excited about that. And again, kind of a quiet day in Bitcoin land, I'd imagine, just playing in this $200 range right here. As always, wish you well from a very cold northern forest in Finland. Take care, and until next time.